What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. So I put up a post on X saying, Francis Hunt, the market sniper, is coming on my show today, and I got a comment. You should go on and look when you get a chance. They said somebody responded, just wind them up and let them go. Oh my God.
Yes.
So we were just talking briefly offline, and I think you and I are on the same page of where things are at and where things are going, and I don't think it's very positive where things are going, but I hope I'm wrong. It's the only time I use the word hope. I hope I'm wrong. And, I hope everything works out, and, maybe we'll have a conversation a year from now talk about movies or something, because everything will be so great. What do you think, Francis?
What does your audience most want to hear about? Because I can skew my response accordingly to that. What is the typical US, Middle America? Give us an avatar, and then I'll do my damnedest to fit the answer to be most useful.
Yeah, no, I think for myself and for people listening, more importantly for myself, just be honest and objective of where you think things are. And, I think we should start with, you've had CPI numbers come out, and, we're seeing a lot of things. Scott Bessen's talking a lot. And I don't know. I mean, I've had conversations with other people in regards to, and including yourself. I mean, you were the first one when you were talking to Andy Schekman. And when Andy Schekman came on my show, the whole idea of the MAGA getting, and I'm paraphrasing here, but getting taken over by big tech to usher in the global reset. I mean, that was you. Yeah. That was initially how I found you, through Andy. This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. With Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and bam, I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. I can also take delivery at any time. Extremely simple and less expensive than any other method. The do-it-yourself way to buy precious metals. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. I mean, look at how easy this is. The Vaulted app on my phone, I can access it at any time.
Yeah, no, Andy had a great chat, and he retained open-mindedness about that. And in fact, I worse than saying taken over, that it was run from the outset with that in mind, but people bought into something more pure and honest, that actually was unfortunately vaccinated, let's say, in advance with a certain itinerary in mind. And as a result, you always cheated. There's no voting yourself freedom in this current place of world. And in fact, you're just endorsing the agenda's continuation by participating in voting. Now, I very well understand, after an absolutely repugnant Biden regime, that many people would have been particularly motivated to vote anybody else but in terms of what was being put in front of you on the Democratic side. But all of that's apart. Voting doesn't save you. All it does is allow the planned pivot of their agenda to take place that looks like that there's a new boss in town whose new broom sweeps clean. This is all optics. This is, and I love that word, by the way, it's become the new word. Optics, people sound sophisticated if you use it. I suggest dropping it so many times that we totally destroy its sense of uniqueness. But anyway, it's the optics that people have bought into. Where to go? Well, PPI came out. So you mentioned stats and numbers. So let's give you the lowdown on that. Our model, which continues to be endorsed, and we keep leaning hard on it. You press your winners and you forget and you stop talking about your losers. That's what a good trader does. You ride your winners, you drop your losers. And I'm talking about investment, not day trading and position trading. And our primary model is hyperstagflation, which is stagnation economically, particularly for the consumer world, which is you, me, and the men in the street that aren't part of an insider cartel. In an environment that there's a very stubbornly high inflation. And we got all the guys coming out. There's certain people I watch that I just, poke with a stick every now and then. They were saying there's no inflation in tariffs. We just got a PPI number coming out, 0.9 against an expected 0.2. So just that's a month to month, by the way. So you won't need to be a brilliant mathematician to do 12 by 0.9 to see that if you were to continue at that rate, you have a 10.8% of producer price inflation. Why is that important? Well, the CPI number looked relatively benign, but producer price inflation is one stage higher up. You have to just think like a business operator. So what's happened is consuming prices haven't rocketed yet, but the guy making the stuff you buy is now paying 10.8% more year on year, if that is annualized and projected, for his inputs. And as a result, he hasn't had the pricing mechanism to push those prices up yet, but that is the next step and shoe to drop. So we've also got, and I call all stats, but I'm talking to my American friends and audience, by the way. We love and respect, and we love your beautiful country when we come and visit it. So if I say something negative, it's not an attack on you personally. It's about governance, and many of it is the same in many other parts of the world. But your statistics are lies, damn lies, and statistics category. So we've continued, we used to call it fake number day, the non-farm payrolls. Now, recently, just on payroll numbers, they told you only had 73,000 jobs created. And I highlight that the previous 2 months were revised down, June by 133,000. So they first give you a number and they later take 133,000 out, and May 125,000. So that is absolutely huge. Now, not only do they revise down month on month after they've come out and they're a month or two old, they get to the end of the year and then they do a second round of haircuts to the supposed jobs that were created. Last year, you faced 819,000 jobs taken out, which is around 73,000 a month that was stated that were just not there, that are assumed by a statistical anomaly or birth death model, etc., etc. I mean, if I open a company in the US, and I have had, it would mean, you have a secretary, they'll assume 2 employees, etc., etc. None of those existed. It can be a special purpose vehicle. So that's why I say lies, damn lies, and statistics. So if you look just at the job creation number at 73,000, actually, you should take the average of the last year down by 58,000. Then at the year end, you should take another 73,000 off. So that's around 130,000 jobs off. But now the monthly down rating is actually even larger. So the average is going up. We had 133 and 125. So imagine you take 133 and 125, let's say 130,000 as the new average down, and then you take that haircut you get at the end of the year at much the same rate as last year, another 70,000 jobs. You're actually sitting at 200,000 jobs that you're told are being created never existed at all. On a non-farm payrolls number. So it's an absolute farce. Government statistics are farcical and are propaganda and are masking agents for something far more nefarious that is truly happening, and they don't want you to know it because you would take certain actions to fight against it if you knew it, and you must be the last to know. You're the patsy at the poker table at the end of the day. That's how you're treated by the corporate fascist cartel of the Mag 7 and governance and all the other insiders. So that's about statistics. That's just the non-farm number. You're being understated on inflation, bringing it back to the PPI number. That's actually, we say, you're facing a much higher. So what do you do when you have too much debt? You debase the money and the debt. That's the trick. It's a simple question. They are managing a huge debt portfolio. No one wants to buy more of it because it's financial repression time. Since 2020, when we said the debt markets are now out of a 40-year bull market and in a bear market. The debt market's lost 55% in 3 to 4 years in capital value. Doesn't matter what interest rate they were paying you, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. If you lose 55% at the same time as gold has gone up from 2,000 and hit a high of 3.5 not that long ago in April, then you can see what's happening. Truth is gold. Debt, it was never a reserve asset. They maintained it as one for 40 years as they did a globalization and a liquidity experiment. And now we are doing a deglobalization tariffs environment. It's absolutely a tax on American citizens. Tariffs are a tax on American citizens. There's some things you need to bring in from other countries. You don't have perfect substitutes for all products, especially inputs for people that run businesses. That's going to push costs up. You are going to have an escalating inflation rate, and the government is the one who's receiving the money. So your government, Donald Trump, who's saying he's fighting for you, doing tariffs on these bad countries, is bragging about how much he's going to tax his own citizens for products they need from an offshore location. So you need to understand the framing of that. That's inflationary, and it's a tax scavenge. We've created a phrase along with hyperstagflation of tax scavenge mode. The governments are going into a scavenge mode because they're sitting with an income problem and too high an interest rate to pay. That's being paid, by the way, to a banker cartel that were given the exorbitant privilege of borrowing your money into existence when a government could have just issued it without interest. So all your biggest payment right now is to the legacy families who are the primary owners of a lot of that debt that are being paid an absolutely usury rate of interest at a time that actually your entire economy is contracting in real terms, not in nominal terms. Your stock market's at an all-time high in nominal terms, divided by gold. Actually, the high was 2021. Even if you divide it by Swiss franc, you haven't made back the April crash yet. So your currency is being debased. You're being fooled by nominal versus real. You need to support the shadow stats. John Williams, whose measures, and will probably have you in the mid-teens right now, on Ronald Reagan's rate of 1982 unchanged. They continue to manipulate the basket so they can create a lie out of the statistics. They're now talking about estimation on some of the inputs of statistics. Your inflation is far higher than you realize. We had a lady who put in a CV19 Walmart slip that was 5 years ago and filled the basket with the exact same items, and it was 136% more expensive. That is almost 4 times. So what cost you $100 then costs $240 today. So that is what hyperstagnation and stagflation is. Stubbornly high inflation and real contraction. And there's going to be unemployment in that. There's going to be lagged wages. You've seen the H-1B visa types, more that the MAGA tech are doing, laying off indigenous Americans for people on 2/3 of the wages that'll work 14-hour days because they're scared to lose their visa and be sent back to Bengal or Bombay. This is not a good time. You've got an overhang of property because the jobs are being lost. The boomer generation peak deaths will be around 2037. They're going to be releasing a lot of housing in there. Never mind the accelerated deaths of recent medical interventions that have gone on. So you're sitting with an overhang of property, stubbornly high inflation rates, and the job market has turned. And that's all being masked by valuation, by a debasing dollar. The property market highs were actually some time ago, the dollar's about 11% down this year against other currencies who are themselves down. So that's the fakery, the nominal, the smoke and mirrors environment to answer your question that the average American must understand. And then we can get into some of the solutions. So I give that back to you.
You know, the propaganda on the right, I think it's just as bad, if not worse, than what it was on the left since the administration had come in. And you're pointing out things that, some of it I've heard before, but yet, the right-wing media is portraying all this as like inflation's good, inflation's not good, inflation's coming down, tariffs are going to benefit. And I just pose a simple question. I'm on the ground in Phoenix, my own little bubble that I live in. When I go to the grocery store, things aren't cheaper. Not that I see. Gas really isn't cheaper. Flying is cheap right now because I don't know if people just aren't traveling, but I was on the road for 5.5 weeks. I got back in July. I was on the East Coast. And Francis, I was eating out. You know, when you're on the road, people were hosting me, but there were times where I had to eat out. I mean, I was paying upwards of $22 for a mediocre couple of patties and some bacon. That doesn't sound like things are getting better to me.
And the one thing that hasn't moved particularly, and it was part of our call that you touched on there that I'll comment on, was oil price. So we actually said go short oil, long gold about a year and a half ago. That's now made its target. So we had gold run from 2000 to its peak at 3.5 and sitting at about 300s at the moment. And you had oil go from about $83 to where it is at 63. And the oil, the energy part, is part and function of a crushed consumer. And they also not wanting, they also can control that. I usually refer to oil market as the Rockefeller tax because there are inherent monopolies that exist in many areas, and oil was one of the first that got established by the original Rockefeller, and many people think that went away. You actually have cooperating other owners that were behind BP and Shell in the Middle East, that were similar families that we don't have to get into here unless you want to, but that there is a pretty well coordinated market. Now, the thing they need is for people to not, they know the consumer is struggling. Don't forget, you've got two hot wars going on. You've got Israel clearing out an indigenous population out of Gaza, and you've got Russia, Ukraine. And this is where we're at on the oil price, $63. You know, we were at subprime when we were all fat and rich on the value of our housing holdings in 2007. The oil price was 147, almost hit $150 peak oil price. So it's like quite a bit lower today. But is inflation lower? No. But if you had $147 oil today, it would absolutely kill the economy. It would be killed long before there. So they're not ready to unleash the hyperinflation. Hyperstagflation is different. It's a very high level, but not extreme level of both, rather than hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is usually double digits and deep into double digits, going into, in certain cases, triple, like Zimbabwe. Here you're going to be in stubbornly high inflation, which is double digit teens, not 99, and you're going to have contractionary growth in real terms when you adjust for a true inflation rate. So it's going to feel, everyone's going to tell you they're not doing that great, but they're going to say, what's wrong with you? The stock market's at all-time highs. This is like this. Your Bitcoin's at all-time highs. All of this. There's a massive liquidity that they're pumping in by the way, which is inflationary. The M2 supply is going up, but it's not going up to you. That means lending is going up, but it'll be going to a lot of big corporations. That means government spending is going up. Look at your big, beautiful bill. Who's the recipient? The corporate fascist cartel of technological companies that are actually building your future surveillance, that have 2 million Americans on a kill list, apparently, a track, and in an extreme events, a potential. The potential for coming at kill list on Palantir, who are deemed, hostile to the political environment through opinions and pushback to government action. So you're being listed, tracked, everything. This privacy is the biggest death that we've ever had. Personal privacy being left alone by our government. This is the global Marxism that is being uploaded, and they're already pretty much there. You saw that World Health Organization transcended national boundaries, set standards for the medical intervention of mRNA, that mass culled a lot of people, senior citizens. They have a pension crisis. They have a lot of balls that they're juggling, and it's the West this time that gets the harshest hit of this new world communism and this Marxist agenda. Under Biden, you got the cultural subversion of the Marxist agenda, which was repugnant for most normal people, men in females' changing rooms with probably more mental disease than anything else. And at the same time now you're getting the Zionist side, which incorporates the technological march and the military march of the status surveillance system, for which you don't hate BlackRock, Vanguard, and Palantir enough. and they are stripping away your freedoms. They have unbelievable powers. They're all dark state centered, and you should be deeply concerned. However, these are the hoarders, the pigs of all the capital, with the massive multiples on the stock market, and all the capital is crowded out there. It's not going into your small businessman. It's not going into your small local farmer. It's not going to your restaurateur, your mechanic, to open a new store to fix your car and all of that. The real lending is going to the mega corps. So the M2 is going up, the government expenditure is going up. That is currency debasement and ensures the inflation. Excess expenditure by government is in fact inflationary and debasement of your currency. And that means the existing debt is being devalued away at the same time, which is largely what they want to do. So you're going to have stubbornly high inflation and a really stagnant economy, but it's a two-tier economy. There's the insiders ball, and then there's the serfs and peasants in the street. And that's what people need to realize.
So, two things I want to ask you. One, what is your expectation for this meeting tomorrow with Trump and Putin? Because I was having a conversation with somebody, and I don't believe that they're walking into this. Details are already worked out, whichever way it goes, right? They're not sitting down tomorrow and it's just theater, right? For the TV, the fact that they're meeting. What are your expectations of what may or may not occur?
I tend not to be too overly fascinated with the theater part. Like you say, Putin and Russia's been pretty clear about what they want for quite a long time. We were insincere, we as the West, as admitted by Merkel, we're pretty insincere in the Minsk agreement. It was to buy time and to get more weapons and more money and more, shindigs. By the way, people have to understand that when the vampires and the corrupt bloodsuckers and pests of governance create wars, it's like they have a vein open in your arm and they can suck blood out of you in the name of funding the war. It's entirely corrupt. It's entirely corruptible. Even when they're actually purchasing the products that they're supposedly doing, which is basically scaled versions of ability to kill people. There's so many intermediaries, there's so many arm dealers, many of them are connected, they're shady for security and your safety reasons. People that are involved in the supply chain between even your local corporation, Lockheed Martin, and the government. The price you actually pay, there's so much skimming, backhanders, political boondoggles. That's why you get every politician voting for a war. There's very few peace voting politicians. You had Ron Paul, who was probably the best president you never had, who probably wouldn't have been voted for many intermediaries. Everyone else is captured. And it's like they have the right to suck that blood out of the American consumer. They keep a vein open, as they say, for the vampires. And this is already dragged on. Don't forget, Trump was supposed to have finished this in the first day he was in charge. This was run the whole Biden regime. It's turned into an almost low tempo, but impossible war for Ukraine to have won. But it leads to immense Slavic pain, Ukrainian white male slaughter, and they run all sorts of corrupt industries. They don't own their own organs anymore once they've been shot. Some people have been picked up that are not clearly fully dead. There's an organ trade going on. There's all sorts of dark entities. You follow certain people in the UK, Ukrainian children are being sold off or sent for adoption or being kidnapped or being shipped out of Ukraine in a war environment. War unleashes resources, human resources like children and organs. And there are real vampires. This is quite a dark topic that when I say are sucking blood, they literally in many instances are sucking the blood of human life and also of the economy's GDP and wealth as well. So it's money and everything else. And there's no way that cokehead Zelensky is in any way really on top of anything apart of a corruption, theft and fraud racket in any meaningful way. And he's backed by certain billionaires And don't forget, he recently bought a controlling stake of 51% in a platinum miner in South Africa, my own country. Many people don't even know about that. What is a leader of a country doing, making personal strategic investments into South African resource industries while his country's at war as well? So, I mean, in terms of my expectations, they'll say whatever they're going to say. Putin has been pretty clear on what he wants, so the Russian position really doesn't shift. They will want all of eastern Ukraine by expectation, which if they got exactly what they want, that would mean from the Dnipro River, which runs from Kiev through Dnipropetrovsk, everything to the right would fall under Russian duress. There'd be a new border, possibly along the riverside. They would continue to maintain their port at Sevastopol. There would be no attacks. They would maintain a border. There's to be no location of missiles into the western side of Ukraine, which would probably then, I don't know where he stands on Odessa. I don't think he's going to be too excited about the port of Odessa on the south of Ukraine falling under NATO. But he would insist that there would be no military ICBMs or anything of long range in the west of Ukraine if they were to divide into a kind of like Berlin, East and West Berlin. And then, he's always said, I don't want the advancement of NATO. And it would have to go back to being a benign, not too militaristic agricultural country. And it's quite clear that the Europeans, that are also all warmongers and war hawks, even though they're equally over-indebted, are not keen for that. They want to play the whole Russia bad, and that's them demanding a vein open for them to do corruption and theft as well. So nobody wants, none of the vampires want the vein closed that feeds the corruptive tendencies.
So do you think this, I mean, it never ends, but do you think this chapter will be closing, or will it continue?
I think there'll be a messy, eventually it'll peter out. I think there'll be a messy pre-agreement, which Putin has said always what he wanted, and Trump will then take, and then they might try, because Trump meeting Putin on his own put all the Europeans and Zelensky's nose out. He will then agree to do a meeting with them both potentially, where Zelensky will sit there probably snorting whatever he was snorting just before and giving dagger eyes to Putin. They'll probably messily cobble together something that may go quiet for a while, but that they can reopen at any time. So you will have this sort of decade of flashpoints and then peter out and fresh flashpoints. I don't think you ever get peace. And by the way, for many Americans, you might not be familiar with the history, but Catherine the Great actually settled, Catherine the Great of Russia settled Ukraine. Ukraine was essentially a large province of, it wasn't known, the name Ukraine is a fairly recent phenomenon. Catherine the Great, and with one of her favorite, her lover, generals, settled and gave land to Russian soldiers after a war to settle Ukraine. It was open territory and it had this very fertile land. All the architecture that you see in towns like Odessa and Dnipro, the opera halls and all of that, this is all built. It has a similarity to St. Petersburg and Moscow's cultural venues. This was all part of Russia before USSR. During USSR, they created the state of that. This is not like, part of Poland that got stolen. There's that one contestable area around Lviv, which is once Polish land, and why it's quite anti-Russian in the hard West over there. I've been to Lviv, Dnipropetrovsk, Kiev many times, and Odessa. It's complex history, but this is a bit like Texas voting or Southern California voting to be Mexico again. Americans would probably have something to say about that if the rest of the world was saying, well, there's a war between Mexico there on California. Actually, that territory needs to go back. So Russia's far more entitled to be indignant than most people in the West, who watch their media, would have you believe.
What about the Middle East? Do you see that escalating again?
I think Israel's going to continue to ruthlessly bulldoze forward on their primary agenda of the Greater Israel Project that they've always stated and are now talking more openly about. So that is a very terrible outcome for the indigenous Semites that are Palestinian, and DNA shows that. Not just Palestinian, well, a part of Palestine. Nathan of Gaza, the rabbi, during 1666, which was when they had their first Messiah, or Zabbatai Zevi, show up, was the rabbi in Gaza, Palestine. It was always Palestine in 1666 and for 1,000 years. So there's always been a multi-faith Levant. And actually, at one point, Jews were actually quite a small percentage of that. And Judea, Israel, all these nations, North Judea, South Judea, a lot of the geographies around all of that don't imply that they were 100% Jewish populations. In fact, Christians and Muslims and Jews were living quite peacefully in what later became the new Israel and the new Israel boundaries. And it came with the post-war injection from Eastern Europe of the Turkic Mongol tribe and Ashkenazi-based European Jews who just decided to crowd out and make home invasions and slowly bully their way through the indigenous populations. And for those that are uncomfortable with that, and I'm aware of the evangelical framing that many Americans have, we have it also in South Africa. Let me point out Christians in Jerusalem are being spat on and removed. Churches are being removed, all sorts of areas. The same's happening in Syria. So it's quite difficult to understand, many to truly fully understand the capture of America and the funding of Israel until you see ADL and AIPAC's activities, which basically fund the political system on certain provisos that you don't get too independent of thought, which basically means it's not your country. You have a captured government. And that's the goal. So if you ask me about Israel, it comes all the way back to America, I'm afraid. And you are funding it. And of all the nations, you give the most aid to that country. And that's because the people who control you have decided to do that. They're not the poorest people in the world. It is a certain category of aid. So I think they will get what they want because the people that are controlling America and even Europe, to varying degrees, though some make a bigger tendency of acting offended by the genocide, are all funding this. So we are going to sit and watch a nation be genocided out of their indigenous land. And there might be some remnants that get moved somewhere. I don't know. But you're going to see the expanding borders of Israel now that Syria's flipped. And eventually there will be Mark II wars in Iran because they definitely want part of Iran, and they'll continue to dress Iran as a major threat. By the way, just go have a look at how many nations Iran's attacked, apart from its war with Iraq that was largely provoked by Saddam Hussein, who was funded by the West to do so. So go see how many wars Iran has provoked versus other people. Go see their malls and how they live as just, a far less aggressive than the wasabiism that is of Saudi Arabia type Islam, which not that long ago beheaded pregnant girls and buried them up to their heads and stoned them if they ever got teenage pregnant. So we support those guys. We support those guys. So the ascendancy, you only have to look at the ascendancy of Dubai and the UAE and Brits leaving a sinking ship UK for that to see where the moneyed Western axes of support stand. And unfortunately, the wrong people are winning, in my take, generally.
Well, and I had Vince Lancy on yesterday, and we were talking about coming back to the United States here for a second. If they have nuclear options to which nothing else is working, and one of those was war, the idea of war, to deflect from the massive debt problem and the economic collapse that's happening here in America. And, going through those scenarios of what you just said with both Russia, Ukraine, and the Middle East, I think it's very possible one of these might, if not both, might escalate in terms of, a nuclear option for the United States.
Possible. It is possible. I think the full-blown nuclear thing is pretty damaging.
Let me correct that. Not a nuclear,
Fallout.
not for instance, not a nuclear bomb. I mean, in terms of like a nuclear option
Oh,
to from the standpoint of the America's economic collapse, and
yeah.
to get us out of it is go into war. So not
Yeah,
literally a
yeah.
nuclear bomb.
Okay, the nuclear option. Yes, I get it. Okay. Yeah, well, we have to, and I think they'll be kept on the back burner enough that they can be restoked up if needed. Because, as I say, they might suddenly need that blood, and they need to create heat in the economy, especially if you do another lockdown or you go the full blue beam and tell us how this alien invasion is going. God knows what psyop was coming. But whatever incredulous story you get told, treat it with suspicion. Experts, whenever you hear statements that experts say, you should just go CIA Mossad says, you should buy into my latest ruse or psyop. That's how you should reframe that. We've lived peacefully without aliens invading for quite a long time. It would be quite ironic if we were to suddenly have these things just timed according to a debt-based collapse where we suddenly need to see all the world's resources and come together as one and fight the baddie. There's quite a bit of agenda, and Reagan floated that one, sadly, because otherwise he was one of the more palatable presidents. Just don't believe. Even seeing isn't believing. You've got to think about holograms. Go back to 9/11. You can't even believe your eyes anymore with AI, or your ears, or anything. And you should be inherently, exceedingly skeptical of anything that comes from statist organizations, which means your secret services, your government, your post office. It goes right down to, but particularly the centralized big departments. There are the sellers of the convenient lie that sees them need to do ABC, which means you give up XYZ freedoms, all in the name of protecting us from, and then fill in the fake theme of choice. The green men, Martians in there with their laser beams that have come from the other part of the universe to attack us. A virus no one can see that actually is not much more than a flu that they've tried to tamper with. And any others. I do think they've pushed through that World Health Organization for many nations. Thankfully, America's opted out of that for now. You should want that to stay that way. But most of the world is captured by it. Maybe they do Mark II there. Look, we can speculate. I don't have the means or the silver ball to tell you what it is. What I do focus on is, listen, you were born for these times. Let's reframe this more positively. You chose your parents, you chose to come. There's a universal, infinite, subconscious mind, and you chose as a spirit to have this experience. That means you were man or woman enough to deal with it. And as a result, remember that, because when you get born and embodied, you forget that sense of spirit. I'm a creationist. Clearly this planet was created. It's beautiful. Animals are amazing. And these funny cultist people that want to intervene, tell you that you can't exist without medical interference, you don't have a great immune system, you need X, Y, and Z. These are story spinning yarnsters that are toxicologists that are trying to poison you. And you've just got to go back to basics and say, I want to live a divine presence. I want to lift people up. This is particularly interesting times and potentially challenging times, but who would want a boring life? You chose these times, be a leader, go out, build wealth for yourself, build wealth for your family, and help and give value to others to do the same. And that's essentially the entire modus operandi of my business. And I mean wealth that goes not just money, but it's health, lifestyle, existence, optionality, freedoms, alternative places. The biggest problem for my American friends, and I'm addressing you, all of you sitting there in the States today, is you're born in that country. Your passport, if you have one, is that country. Your bank, if you have one, is that country. Your job or business is that country. And you lack optionality if your particular country does particularly insane laws or rulings. And I'm saying totalitarianism is coming, and some of the biggest corporations of that totalitarianism sits there on your NASDAQ in that Mag 7. The top 10 stocks are 40% of your stock market. Never before have you seen it. We had the Nifty 50. Now you have the Mag 7. Literally 7 corporations that are running the service for the military industrial complex, that are tracking your data, that have got access to your medical records and putting together entire grids biometrically for you. Trump is bringing in the biometrics with BlackRock appointee Shinbaum, who's supposedly the president of a Roman Catholic nation of Mexico, and she's going along with it because she's just one tentacle of the same BlackRock arm. It's an absolute bun fight. You need optionality. You've got to be careful that you aren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. You owe it to yourself to survive. You owe it to your family members to survive, and not only survive, but to thrive. So you should build wealth and build freedom, optionality, options outside of just the United States. Very hard, beautiful country, big country. I love it. But you need something else. You need to look at nations that you might have looked down on before, that you would consider emerging, or others. But if I was 25, I was born in America right now, I'd probably go to Malaysia, probably go to Indonesia. They're willing, they still like Western white people. You could be an entrepreneur there. There's a high labor force. The demographics are more like this instead of the other way around, inverted pyramid. You can set up businesses. You probably have more freedom there. Land is cheap. You have fresh fruit, great climate. I'd consider that. That doesn't mean you leave America forever. You can still visit. You can come back. You can still have 1 or 2 investments, but you should develop a multi-potential polarity type existence, which allows you to have bolt holes that aren't just in the mountains in the US, because you can't escape the US legal system. And the one downside of the US passport is that you're taxed universally and internationally. And I would say there's going to be exit taxes coming in the future. There will be unrealized capital gains, and that is theft. And remember, they want you to own nothing and be happy. They did the document. They did the diagram. That is communism. Communism is your greatest threat, Marxism, and it comes from a certain group of people, and they are relentless on it. And they cooperate with corporations, that they give corporate licenses so that they can get away with doing things that governments aren't allowed to do. So you have this quasi-corporate governments, MAGA 7, that are actively plotting against you. Your devices are listening to you. So it goes on. You've heard it all before. Snowden was a real insight. Epstein is a real insight. Ignore what these things are telling you and muddle on and say, I'll think about it another day, and be caught by surprise. Take it seriously. Start having some plans. Even the best plans don't always work, but if you have optionality, you actually have ways that you can reduce some of the totalitarianism that is coming our way. And the West will be hardest hit. The US is the hegemon. You are sitting on the tallest ladder. And when the ladders fall, unfortunately, for the dollar and the debt and everything else, you'll fall from the highest point. That should be a point of concern. But, you've lived there all your life. You're subject to hyper-normalization. I'm warning you that suddenly things change, and then they change badly. Many nations have been before there. Argentina was once one of the wealthiest places. You'll smile if you think about it. You could become the next Argentina. People need to wake up and be aware. That's the message. You need to take action. Everybody, all our American clients are taking action and have optionality, and they're working towards it slowly. It doesn't have to happen overnight, in a week or a day. There's only so much you can achieve. But you should start.
Well, what are your thoughts on? I'd like to get your insights on the Genius Act and how the Federal Reserve will play a part in the future, if any.
So there's a couple of acts that were passed recently, and I'm the last person to refer. The least thing I would ever do is comb through the minutiae detail of acts that I could give you a valuable legal thing. I just know from the 5-bullet summary. I'm the guy who will read the 5-bullet summary of the worst repercussions from a cynic to see what's coming in there. And it is an advancement of totalitarianism and corporate creep and surveillance. And the reason I know that, even before I see the 5-bullet summary, is because I know that's what they've been doing everywhere else. It started with your Patriot Act in 9/11. In fact, it started before even that. So every bill and act has been about tightening the grip of governance. Tightening the grip of governance over your rights to privacy. The biggest victim is a personal man's privacy and ability to be self-reliant and look after himself. They absolutely want everyone ward of state. So every bill, if you ask me a specific question on one bill, I'll say, here's the commonality between all those bills. They are marching forward towards totalitarianism, domination, the right to storm into your home one day, maybe to confiscate your guns one day. Maybe that'll come. I know a lot of guys will hear that and say, never, never, I'll die. They are undermining you at every chance they get. That's what governments do. Once you get that big, they have to keep voting the same way they've done to get bigger, because nobody votes for small government. And by the way, the downturn that would also cause problems. But suddenly you would have corporations and new businesses and small businesses growing. They've crowded out the capital. What you actually have isn't capitalism. We aren't in a capitalist society. We have a massive, bloated, overarching bureaucracy of government that intervenes into every aspect of life where they're not needed. And at great cost and great inefficiency, they slow the processes of business and they overregulate. And to maintain their power, they overwrite themselves very, very amicable laws that allow them draconian powers over you so that they can curtail your activities. All of that is anti-capitalist, cacocracy, and there's a huge chain of corruption where politicians like Nancy Pelosi, dare we mention, that actually is worth 427 million, along with her husband, that seems to know very well just before which companies are about to be given massive government contracts and has lots of call options and other things. They are laughing at you and stripping money out at your cost, whilst they are backing statist organizations that imprison you. You are paying corporations to imprison you, and your prison wardeners are getting rich on following that money and front running that money. That is where you are. That is this nation state. That is absolute cacocracy into communism. This is Bolshevik communism. The problem with Bolshevik communism is that it has a genocide regularly associated. You might think you've already had one. Well, you might get a bit more, because there's many waves of genocide. It happened in Russia, it happened in China under Mao, it happened in Vietnam, it happened in Cambodia in the killing fields. It happens wherever communism is injected. They want to clear out the free thinkers. And if you're watching this show, you're probably one of those. So you maybe need a plan where you aren't entirely got your entire life in America to survive this. Otherwise, I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but I study history. I don't think I'm wrong. It's a pretty bad track record. It's almost 100%.
It's incredible to me as well how people are so trusting of the government now with this administration. They went from not trusting to, the MAGA movement, how they get trust the people that they know what they're doing. It's like, okay, did we not learn anything from COVID? I don't trust any government. I don't care who's in charge.
Who's being put up front as pretending to be in charge? Which guy that went on a TV show to say, you're fired, act tough, look like he's negotiating all these amazing deals, has been put forward as your savior hero, who probably is on the Epstein list, suddenly isn't releasing the Epstein list, which actually is a blackmail racket run by the Mossad of all your politicians that are receiving money to become centimillionaires at the behest of front-running contracts that they are awarding that benefit the country of Israel more than it benefits you, and that benefit this internationalist, mercantilist capture team that are bringing communism for the peasants and right to rule supremacy for those that are in the insider class. There's nobody you vote for. As I started this discussion, you don't vote yourself freedom. They're just selling you a bad guy who's less bad than the previous bad guy. And you all bought it and you think you're winning. You've got someone in. You never vote yourself freedom. In fact, as I've said, voting is endorsing this process. The cultists have a habit of telling you the drink is poisonous, and once you drink it yourself, you opted to do that. They unincurred by karma because they put poison on the label. And I'm telling you, your political system is entirely poisoned and captured on both sides. Don't play the left-right game. Every time you vote, you are endorsing the outcome that is coming at you. There is no liberty. You need to find a place to exist that by natural force has a smaller government and is going through a less harsh, or you need to establish your own country, which is kind of tough. So you probably need to develop options outside of the US.
So, for instance, people are listening to this, and they say to themselves, "Okay, what can I do?" I actually get a lot of emails from people that have moved into like remote areas in the United States, or they're doing the RV life. What are your suggestions from a starting point of somebody that they don't know where to begin?
Build wealth, first of all, and there's real things you can do, because as bad as all of this news sounds, there's going to be immense opportunities. Every crisis creates opportunities. Most of the opportunities are being skimmed by the insiders, and they know them in advance because they know what they're creating as crisis. But actually, some of that you can still participate in. So you need to build wealth, because unfortunately in this world, without having money or means, you can't start doing too much. If you go with just $100 to your name and you go live in a tree house in the most remote area in the Rocky Mountains or somewhere in North Canada, it's still going to be hard. You need kits, you need equipment. I'd certainly say it's better to be rural than urban in these times, because your problem is all the other underprepared people that will all turn into thieving zombies when they squeeze the food supply. Let's not forget about Gates, BlackRock, Bezos, Zuckerberg buying up tons of farmland. I point out that the Bolsheviks are typically very good at throttling food supply and causing starvation. And that's what they did in Ukraine and Russia, which was not known as Ukraine back then in the Bolshevik Revolution. That's what they did in the Far East as well. So I do think there's a trick with the food. They may also contaminate the food, which means being self-reliant on food and being able to barter with someone else who's growing things you're not is very smart. So being in a community of like-minded could serve you exceedingly well. And I'd certainly focus on that. If you're choosing to stay in America, I'd get remote and be in a community. I would still say you should have an international place that you could just be with one flight away, ideally, where you might have something of similar nature. It doesn't have to be expensive. Some of these other countries, heading Costa Rica, Panama, we do a lot of things. You don't have to go as far. You can fly to in a few hours, especially if you're in Florida, for example, or Texas. So have some international optionality, because some things, even if you are remote in the countryside, will require regulation, will require assets to be put on the blockchain and an NFT. Otherwise, you don't own it. They'll force you into it by saying your property tax on your treehouse on that acre of land, or 5 acres of land, or 25 acres of land, or 1,000 acres of land, you need to register here, and you need to give your name, and you need to do this, and you have to have an NFT and to represent your ownership of that property. And they will bounce you into their system of biometrics. And once you start complying, which you'll almost be forced to do just to continue to own whatever it is you own, you end up in a contagion of small yeses till eventually you're using your fingertip on your device, because every other option was too big a headache, and they have your biometrics and they have everything. So, as I say, having multi-country-based jurisdictions is important, and it's a hard one for an American, for which America is a big world, and many have just lived in America and holidayed other places and maybe don't even like them as much as America, but you should do it anyway. That's the advice. Build wealth, get rural, and get self-reliant. So I have solar panels on all my various abodes that I stay in. I own them outright, unleveraged, in case interest rate spikes. I don't have relationships with banks on them, basically. You own your own title deeds in terms of the great taking. And I would also say If you buy shares, own your share certificates, all sorts of things. There's going to be counterparty risk in a contagion collapse scenario, which is probably what they are setting us up for on the financial realm. There'll be a shock and awe, Rumsfeld-like chaos that will go down with that. That could involve internet grid downs, mobile network grid downs. That's where ham radios or CB radios for communication become kind of useful. That's zombie apocalypse stuff. That's real prepper stuff. But there's something to be said for being that prepared. So do a bit of that, but build money, dump fiat for gold and silver. Gold is real money, silver is real money. I'm also an advocate for platinum. You can trade, but that requires an internet connection probably. And I expect in future, everyone and every time we go onto the internet, we will have to biometrically certify that who we are and what we are, to control hate speech against people, to stop minors from seeing porn, for example. Then go and study who are all the biggest perpetrators of all the different brands of porn, and you'll find the same Marxist communists that are bringing the grid that I'm referring to. So, there's quite a bit in that. That's quite a lot to do. You've got to get started and just recognize you're having an experience. Life is you're having an experience. You might get a challenging life. Some kids got off, boat loaders in World War II, ran straight into automatic fire on beaches at the age of 19 and never got any further than being a floating corpse in the channel between England and France. So for every year I've had, I'm grateful, and I continue to be grateful. I'll continue to play the game that's in front of me. And remember this, as the Gretzky saying, to use some American cliches, don't skate to the puck, skate to where it's going. And the concern for me is the trajectory things are moving in. And I look at the patterns, not what they say, but what they do, and all the patterns they're in. We are going to have a greatly reduced freedom existence generally in the world, and the West is going to be hardest hit and greatest levied financially to bring our living standard down to that of the rest of the world, which could make many people reliant on a UBI and a CBDC and ward of states, which means your welfare will seek compliance out of you for all forms of things. So building wealth and being in other jurisdictions that give you optionality, because a perfect new world order, global, is unlikely immediately to be established. So you'll be able to buy plenty of time in the arbitrage of different legal systems, different countries and nations. And I hope to get as much time as I can get and continue to enjoy life. I exercise every day. I was in a cold plunge today.
I saw you riding around. I saw you riding around on your YouTube video.
Yeah, exactly. Live every day like it's last. You should. As I say, refer the 16, 17-year-olds getting off into automatic gunfire. Some of them might never have had a girlfriend yet. Think how lucky you are. And remember that and make the most of every goddamn day that you get given. And prepare as well. Be messianic, be honest, be hardy and hardworking, and be a person of principle. And in a time where truth is the revolutionary act, and that's where we are right now, because the psychopaths of power are going for absolute power. The corruption is there, and the absolute power is being sought. And we should resist and make as many plans to create community outside of that.
I know I'm running out of time here with you, but I just want to ask you one, I think, short question. You mentioned opportunities. Can you give a Coffee and a Mike exclusive of something that you would recommend to people for the long game of keeping an eye on and maybe investing in?
I'll just share one thing quickly, for example, and this is a mining company that is in the US. It's Hecla Mining. Let's go back. Whoops, I've changed it all. Let me just get it back again. So I'm going to show you an example of what we do that helps build wealth, and that is a technical method. We are gold bulls. We are real money bulls. This is a chart. We've been watching this for quite a while. There were results today that were announced. This is a technical trade that we took, and we are of the view that stock's going to 84.75. Again, you should want your certificates for that, for the great taking reasons. That is a technical pattern. By the way, that's the a monthly chart. If you take it
I
down
can't see
just
it,
to the
Francis.
daily chart.
I can't see the chart if you're trying to show something.
Sorry, did the share not start? Maybe I didn't do that. Let me do that again. Did the share not start? Please allow the share. Okay, let's do that again.
Here we go.
Thank you. So this technical setup, Hecla Mining Company, US stock on the New York Stock Exchange, we actually see a 85 run. It's at $7 at the moment. That's huge. That could do a lot for a lot of people in terms of buying land and making sure you've got enough ammo and various other things. That's a technical breakout. That's what we talk about in our community. That $9 level will fall. It will support for a very long time over here. Let me just get this draw tool that helps you see where I'm pointing a little bit better. There's that $9 mark. As I say, that was a descending triangle. That was the bad times. The key thing with HVF method is we like to just show up for the good bits when there's money to be made. Everyone else can be bag holders for the years since 2007, 8, 9, 10, not doing much, not going anywhere. You should have been in the mega stocks back then during this period. But now this is coming alive. That is mining and resources. They want to create inflation to debase the debt, even though they're pretending they're not and they want Powell to cut. It's all theater. So that's the monthly chart, a technical setup. We teach you HVF method and we do it ourselves. And if I show you on a daily time frame, they actually had results yesterday. And that technical setup, you can use the smaller time frames to break into the bigger time frame. So this is an example of profits that you could have had that weren't made because you're not familiar, you're not part of the community that we're with. But that can change. You can book a call from our YouTube channel anytime you like, the Market Sniper. If you bought there with a stop there, you actually got an 8.88 risk reward. You would have gapped on the open on the excellent results. By the way, I took a picture of those results that came out. That's your PPI that came out a whole bunch higher, by the way. That tells you inflation is going to get worse. Hecla Mining jumped 20%, literally from one day to the next as a result of earnings. Now, we would have, if we were watching that, have expected exactly that because of the HVF setup, which tells you break to the upside in a fast-moving way. You can get away with a tight stop and a really asymmetric reward. And instead of coming in at 245, they came in at 304. That's the better part of 50 million more than the 250 million expected. So that's 20%, and hence the share's done nearly 20%. So that's an example. Now, by the way, you've broken into this miner that actually we think is going to do $85. So you don't get rid of it. You use the stop loss here. There was 605. You could have bought at the close on whatever it was yesterday. What day was that? Let's check it out. 6th of August. We're on a daily. So it had already broken. You would have needed to do this last week. This is just an example case for you. If you bought at 610 and had a stop at 604 today, you would have, in fact, before today on the 12th of August, which was this week, you already would have made your 7.72. Now, you could have closed there, but we think this will pull back for a short bit now that it made that target. The target's the purple line. But on the much bigger time frame, that this is going to go far more. So we are looking at patterns within patterns on how you can build wealth. So if we go back up to a quarterly time frame, which is 3 months, and just show that setup, you've got the $85 that could be made. So that's very, very big, and it's a great move. Now, we're doing this all the time, and can I say gold is in a key trend, and we feel, yep, that trend is not going to be dying in any great hurry soon. So as a result of that, $85 is quite likely. They're going to be cash hemorrhaging companies. Costs have been kept a little bit lower because of the oil. We were behind the go long gold short oil trade. There's lots of technical aspects. This is my core business, HVF method. How do you build wealth in reset times? That's the key point we want to answer. Number one, help make you wealthier. Then you protect that wealth. That's trusts, international companies, etc., etc. Multiple passports potentially over time, or at least residencies, places that you're entitled to residence. Zero capital gains jurisdictions for your gold shares that have made money, your crypto that's made money, your bullion that's made money, or indice investments that have made money. Start using the laws and systems they implemented to protect themselves, to protect yourself from them. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? That's what we're all about. HVF method, you can learn. Market Sniper is the YouTube channel. Book a call if you want to come, or just watch the videos for a while and see the world in our view. In everything that I've felt as our model, that the world is going in as a direction appears to continually becoming more and more towards my darkest views. However, there's a beautiful life to be had, and I intend to have it. And I intend to have it in a manner that I can transpose those benefits to other people on a scale basis through our online community. It's desktop based, on your device with an app, everything. Watch the Market Sniper channel, decide if you would like to talk further, and then book a call when the time feels right. We'd be delighted to have you. We have a lot of Americans. In fact, one of our Americans is a Floridian, and he's coming and he's going to stay in one of my properties in Cape Town because he's been a long-standing member. He's a leader and gives webinars. I've got to know people. They're my friends. This is what happens when you get like-minded people as a community together, working together. We get to spend time together. We get to see each other, and it's my absolute delight to host him for free in one of my properties there. And I look forward to seeing him and a Chinese one from Hong Kong, who's an amazing guy, and another one from South Africa further down the coast. So, I mean, you know, I live with awake people. I don't tolerate being gaslit by morons who don't see what's coming. And if you're in that space and you're feeling alone, maybe you need to surround yourself with people that see, because once you see, you can't unsee. And once you've seen, you need to take action. And that's what our community is all about. And the key parts are secure your wealth, protect your wealth, secure freedoms. Those are the three things that I'm entirely all about. Thanks for having me on. I think I must stand down now.
Yeah, Francis, thank you. So can you stop sharing your screen for 1 second? And then I want to ask you, where else can people find you on X? Just so they can
Certainly,
see your whole, so they can see your whole face and not the chart.
Yeah, where's that Zoom workplace gone? I'm terrible with these controls now. I've lost it, and it normally
Should be on the bottom. Or
disappears.
That's okay. Yeah, if you can't find it, it's okay. Where else can people?
Has it stopped sharing?
Nope, no. Not yet.
No, it's asked. I asked to share, and it's still. Oh, there we go. It's sharing a different screen there.
There you go. Where can people find you? YouTube, and then where else?
Also on X, under the Market Sniper acronym. We don't trust for a minute, but we will trade and take the benefit of an inflating crypto market. So also I have a separate YouTube channel and X profile called The Crypto Sniper. So you can see me at The Market Sniper and The Crypto Sniper. And yeah, go and enjoy. And if it feels right, give us a try. But otherwise, get some free tips on how we see the world. And thank you for having me on.
Francis, thanks for coming back. I look forward to continuing to follow your work and more conversations ahead.
100%. Thank you for having me on. It was great. And good luck to everybody. Keep your spirits up. You don't need to go long antidepressants. You need to get exercise. You need to walk in the forest. You need to get healthy. You need to enjoy your life and live every day, love every day, do all the things you should do every day. It's a beautiful life. You chose these times. You're big enough to handle it. Stand up. Okay. Bye for now.
Mic drop.